it's a joy, as always, to be here for this particular weekend. And it's essentially a Croft and Perry weekend.
No way around.
No fisticuffs.
We have Lady Croft, we have Princess Croft, we have Lord Perry here with us. And of course, I was fortunate enough to be involved with not only Dad's Army, which of course we're here for this weekend, but I was involved with 8 Half Hot Bar, My Evening Served, and then of course Heidi Harry, Ragnarod, and really, we've had a funny old week this week. So I would like to keep it brief and ask you very kindly to raise a glass to my dear friend Paul Shane.
Look at these faces. Dear friends, we've known each other pretty well since the year dot. Looking round, I see dear Frank Williams. May I let you into a little secret that nobody really knows? When I first got the idea for DAAS Army, I was working with a brilliant woman called Joan Littlewood at Stratford East. And I thought, I've got to get a decent part on television. I know what, I'll write a pilot. And so I thought, I'll write about that. There's no other reason that I was in it. And so I wrote down Frank Williams, Vicar. That was the first name I wrote down. The following afternoon, Sunday, I saw on television, Oh, Mr. Porter, with Will Hay, Maud Marriott, and the other one. And then I thought, that's it. That's the way. A pompous man, I'm letting you know all this stuff. I don't care anymore. Pompous man, old man, young boy. And that was a tiny little start of Dad's Army. And it was worked its way up. And over the years, there's so many people here. My dear friend John Clegg, Mr. Lardy Dalgunner Graham. When he first came to me for a job, John Clegg had just returned from Hong Kong, where he was a lieutenant in the infantry, weren't you not? Fighting, you didn't fight the Chinese, more sense, no. And he came to see me for a part, and he had a full head of lovely hair, and he called me sir. And I thought, well, he turned out to be a staunch member of many, many wonderful artists. And looking around, seeing so many people, and especially Jeff Holland and dear Bill Pertwee, how he first started, who's in charge, that was the person, who's in charge. And that's all the history. I'm looking for, no, that was it. Pure chance, just luck. The right time, the right place, and the right subject. But before I go any further, I want to do a little tribute to my late partner, David Croft. We had an amazing time together. You see, the main thing was, we weren't pals at all. We were just two people who worked very hard and helped each other or suggested to each other. Anyhow, I'd like to give you a little thank to David Croft. And now, I'd like to pay a tribute to somebody, David's widow, Anne Croft. Let me tell you, I first knew Anne Croft when she was 17. It's amazing. She was a beautiful young woman.
Yes,
And she was, I didn't even know David Croft in those days. And later, she was an agent. And what an agent, oh boy, did she get work. She said, you've got a lot of talent, Jimmy, and I'm going to show it off. And then she proceeded, that time I worked with John Hanson. Now do some of you older people remember the great John Hanson. She dragged David, poor David, round to see me in every show. Golders Green, Hippodrome, I was there, called When We're Young, and we were having a drink after the show. And Anne said to David, "Didn't you think, children, that Jimmy was super?" And I said, I pretended not to have heard her. And she proceeded to drag David Croft round to see me in everything. She persevered. And that's how it all started. And I owe it all to the beautiful, glamorous Anne. Your health, Anne. It doesn't look a day older.
I only did one episode of this marvellous programme, which was called Round and Round Went the Great Big Wheel, which, as most people probably know, is an obscene army song, and a variation of it. And I was the man who was operating this. And I can remember Jimmy Perry introducing me to various people as somebody he knew from the Palace Theatre, Watford. And when we got to Jimmy Beck, he said, "Yes, we've often met lots of people that you knew at the Palace Theatre, Watford, Jimmy, but you never seem to produce any pretty girls. Didn't you have any pretty girls with you at the Palace Theatre, Watford? And couldn't you bring them out? It'd be nice to have them on location with us." And Jimmy thought quite seriously for quite some moments. He said, "Yes, that would be a good idea. But the only trouble is, they're not funny." And I think he was quite right. Charming, provocative, but not funny. No. Now, what I'd just like to say, some people talk about this period in our lives as a golden age of comedy. Now, I don't know whether it was actually a golden age of comedy, but if you think of Dad's Army, It Ain't a Hot Mum, Heidi High, Are You Being Served, You Rang the Lord, The Good Life, Porridge, Rising Damp, that it was a pretty good time. Wasn't it? It was a really good time. And the one thing that I just want to make the point of is that nearly all the actors that were engaged in these sitcoms, they were nearly all theatre trained. I mean, you take The Good Life, Penny Keith, Felicity Kendall, Paul Eddington, Dickie Bryce. They were all trained in the theatre. Now, I'm speaking to the non-theatrical members of the audience at the moment. You may not realise this, but in those days, we all trained in the theatre. Most of us in rep, in 3-weekly rep, fortnightly rep, and some of us in weekly rep. And that was the most tremendous training of all. And that is one of the reasons, only one of them, why these programs were so successful. Because you had an audience to tell you what to do. I can remember being in a play by Terence Rattigan called Separate Tables, marvellous play, marvellous author. And I was playing a young doctor. I was quite young in those days, with hair.
We all were once.
And I said this line. I'd never thought of the comedy in it at all. And I said this line reasonably intelligently, and it was about 5 lines long. And as soon as I started to say it, the audience started to laugh very, very gently. And I thought, well, I can't stop because I've already started. So I went on, and the audience laughed more and more and more until they got to the end of the line, and then there was an enormous laugh. And I thought, that's that's wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Rattigan. You've got this, not me. I didn't do anything. All I said was I just said the line. So the next night, I thought to myself, now this is the funny line. And I said it, nothing. And I thought, what did I do wrong? And I thought, oh yes, of course, I thought it was a funny line, didn't I? Yes, I better not do that. So next night, it was slightly better, but not really. And then I thought to myself, I must cut out all thought of it being a funny line and just say the line as he wrote it. It happened, they laughed, and they laughed at the end of it. Who taught me how to say that? You, the audience. You taught me how to say it. And this often happens, obviously, in comedy. But you also know it in drama and in straight plays and in thrillers. You know when the audience are sitting on the edge of their seat and listening to every word you say. You know that you've got them. And you also know when you haven't got them. And they talk to each other and they drop their programmes and they have a sweetie and in those days had a cigarette and go to the loo and do all those sort of things, and you know you haven't got them. The audience tell you what to do. But my goodness, it was hard work. We used to do a play in a week. Every week we did a different play. You rehearsed it during the daytime, and in the evening you played another play that you'd been rehearsing the week before. And then you went on to the next week and the same thing happened. And that went on and on and on. And I can remember standing outside the door of a set, because I started absolutely from the bottom. I was an ASM and parts, which is an assistant stage manager who is the lowest form of theatrical life, and he sweeps the stage and makes the tea and the coffee for the actors and prompts them in rehearsal and occasionally in performance. And it's very, very hard work. And I was standing outside the door of the set, and I thought to myself, I'm not asleep on my feet. No. I'm just sort of going in and out of consciousness rather gently, waiting for my cue. My God, there's my cue! And I came on, and I was playing a butler. You play a lot of butlers when you're an ASM. And the dialogue should have gone like this. The lady of the house, who was being played by Mavis Field, whom I eventually fell in love with and married, and we stayed married for 47 years, which isn't bad, is it? And the dialogue should have gone like this. Elwyn, I thought you were at the pictures. We returned almost immediately, madam. My wife wasn't feeling very well. Scintillating dialogue. But because I was on the wrong foot, so to speak, I started to say that it was me who was feeling ill and not my wife. And then I realised it was my wife, so I changed it halfway through the lines. So it went like this. Elgin, I thought you were at the pictures. We returned almost immediately, madam. I was feeling my wife. That is what is known, ladies and gentlemen, in theatrical parlance, as a corpse. I'm not really quite sure why. I think it must be that if you laugh when you shouldn't laugh, then you're dead. If anybody's got a better idea than that, then please tell me. And it usually happens when something slightly rude happens. That wasn't too rude for you, was it? I do remember quite a rude one. I was doing a lovely play called Move Over, Mrs. Markham, which of course was by Ray Cooney and John Chapman, for the season at Torquay. And it was a lovely company, and I really enjoyed it. My wife used to come down every weekend. It was lovely. And one morning, when I was shaving, I had a little flat at Brixton, and I noticed I got a hair on the end of my nose. And because I got my razor in my hand, I just cut it off, which I shouldn't have done. Of course, I should have plucked it out. And then it grew, and of course it grew very small and very sharp, because I cut off the end. And I was completely unaware of this. And during the action of the play, Virginia Stride, Jimmy, was playing Mrs. Markham, I was playing Mr. Markham, and we were sort of two leading parts in it. And during the play, we had a kiss. Now, it wasn't a great orgasmic smooch. It was a rather charming and delightful husband and wife kiss. And as I took Ginny in my arms and was about to kiss her, well, our lips practically met. She said, "You've got a prick on the end of your nose." And I thought she probably laughed slightly, and she put her head on my shoulder and fell about. That was another corpse. Anyway, I think I've run out of time. I think I better sit down while I'm still waiting.
It's a miracle.
It is a miracle, absolutely, quite right. How lucky I was to work for Jimmy at the Palace Theatre, Watford. The extraordinary thing about being an actor is you never know what is going to lead to something important. So I did a play called Honeymoon Beds. Now you can see the kind of play that was. And I was in Honeymoon Beds at Watford for Jimmy Perry. And years later, very soon after, I became the chairman of the supporters club of the Palace Theatre, Watford. So I got to know Jimmy really well. And then years later, he had this extraordinary vision of a programme about a lot of old men who were in the Home Guard. I wasn't one of those. I, apart from Ian Lavender, was the youngest member of the cast. Now look at me, can you believe it? I was the youngest member of the cast, and I had a wonderful time. I mean, I always say that was the most happy period of my life, being the vicar in Dad's army. It was wonderful. I mean, it actually even was better than being a bishop in You Rang Me Lord. I love being a bishop, but I love being a vicar as well. So I just owe everything to the extraordinary sort of thing of getting together, that I was in the right place when David wanted Jimmy wanted someone to be this extraordinary character in Honeymoon Beds, and when he wrote Dad's Army, he thought Frank Williams the vicar. Thank God he did. Thank you so much. It was wonderful. Thank you, Jimmy. I shall always be eternally grateful. It was a wonderful part of my life. Thank you. I've drunk too much tonight.
I'd had some very good training, of course, and everybody knew that. I was trained in farming, making parts for Spitfire fighters. I mean, I really got some, great training behind me. So it was no surprise that I, did what I did. And I know that at that time, Jimmy was sort of looking for certain characters, and he spoke to David. David then spoke to Anne, and Anne said, "Well, what sort of actor do you want?" He said, David said, "I don't want an actor at all. I want somebody who can push people about and shout at us." She said, "I've got the very person for you." And that's how it came about. And I joined DAAS Army. I mean, I could have been now scrubbing the floors somewhere, because I tried to be an actor. But that's terrible. I would never try to be an actor. Father's the end of Oxford Street. He said, "Do you watch them?" I said, "What is?" "Yes,
But you can't make any more, can you? Because you're all dead now. And also to Jimmy Perry.
He's still here. He's over there. Look. Thank you very much.